US President Donald Trump says it may soon be clear if Hamas will accept final Gaza ceasefire proposal. New Israeli breach of the Blue Line reported along Lebanon's southern border. And Syria unveils new national emblem. President al-Shara emphasizes unity and diversity. Good afternoon and welcome to the Qnews Afternoon Bulletin. I'm Mark Summers. Palestinians in Gaza mourn victims killed in Israeli strikes as ceasefire talks continue. Mourners gathered in Gaza's Khan Yunis on Friday to bid farewell to relatives killed by the Israeli fire. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, some were killed overnight in airstrikes while others were shot while seeking aid. Meanwhile, US President Trump said it would likely be known within 24 hours whether Hamas will accept a final proposal for a Gaza ceasefire. Trump previously said Israel had agreed to a 60-day truce aiming at ending the conflict. Gaza's health ministry reports over 56,000 Palestinians have been killed since Israel launched its offensive following Hamas's October 2023 attack. An Israeli airstrike on a Gaza City school shelter kills at least 15 Palestinians, most of them women and children. At least 15 displaced Palestinians were killed on yesterday, when an Israeli airstrike targeted the Mustafa Hafez school, which had been converted into a shelter in Gaza City's El Ramal neighborhood. Local sources say most of the victims belong to one family. Grieving mother Suhaya Alakan described her son as bright as the moon, but also said that he was burned beyond recognition. Another strike on a shelter in eastern Gaza City reportedly killed 16 people as the Israeli attacks continue across the Strip.
Possible ceasefire between Israel and Hamas mediated by America. Qatar is one of the...
US President Trump says it could be soon clear if Hamas will accept a final Gaza ceasefire proposal. President Trump said on Friday it would likely be known within 24 hours whether Hamas has agreed to what he described as a final proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza. According to officials, the plan involves staggered release of 10 living Israeli detainees and the return of 18 bodies in exchange for Palestinian prisoners held by Israel. Of the 50 remaining hostages in Gaza, 20 are believed to still be alive. Under the proposal, humanitarian aid would enter Gaza immediately, while Israel would begin a phased military withdrawal from parts of the enclave. Talks on a permanent ceasefire would also start right away.
Has Hamas agreed to the latest framework for a ceasefire and hostage deal?
We'll see what happens.
Now, for more, we cross over to Mona Masahi in our newsroom. Mona.
Right, thank you so much, Mark. And for further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by journalist and researcher Mr. Ihab Omar. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Omar, and welcome to Qnews. Let me here start by asking you, how might repeated Israeli strikes on shelters impact civilians' trusts in any future ceasefire or humanitarian arrangements?
Greetings to you and viewers. Thank you so much for having me. Now we're about to see finally real features for a truce agreement in the Gaza Strip. This must have been a ceasefire agreement, not a truce, because the truce means implicitly that the war might be resumed after, and there has been no truce throughout history where the war was not resumed after. So it's better to agree on ending the war or an end to the fight and not a truce. But regardless of the terminology, the reading of Trump and Netanyahu to the Gaza war has proven that the war is a failure and Israel will be unable to continue. And now we see a victory for the Egyptian vision that a ceasefire is inevitable, and even if the truce is only for 60 days, this is victory for the Palestinian people and for their resistance. And the negotiation tables now has no more of the demonic Trump's vision of displacing the Gazan population from the Strip. And even if it's a temporary truce, it's a partial and tactical victory for the Palestinian people and the Palestinian question, as well as the Egyptian vision and role in the Middle East, to prevent the displacement and prevent the liquidation of the Palestinian cause.
Now, Mr. Almer, what could be the potential risks, or are we speaking here about advantages, for Hamas in agreeing to a staggered detainee exchange under the US-backed proposal?
To my estimate, Israel was trying to liquidate or neutralize Hamas completely in the Gaza Strip, and Hamas is no longer able to govern the Strip, and they are no longer as influential in the second day to the war stage or even in the truce phase. So it's a real victory or gain for the Palestinian people, and the Hamas movement is going through its worst phase, and I don't see any gains for Hamas following any type of agreement, because Hamas no longer has anything to lose. All the civil and military leaders of Hamas inside the Gaza Strip were assassinated, and it's enough to say that there is no unified military leadership for Hamas at the moment, but the affiliated militias and military task forces have taken orders that each leader of each task force is now responsible for their own teams, and they are not able to communicate with the other teams because there are no plans for coordination. Hamas has turned into military militias in the Gaza Strip without unified leadership politically, militarily or civilly. And to my estimate, this is the defeat of Hamas, and Israel has already succeeded in eliminating Hamas's influence in Gaza.
Now, President Trump gave Hamas 24 hours for response. Now, what does this indicate about the U.S. leverage in those talks?
It means that the US president is aware of what I just mentioned. Hamas no longer has unified leadership or ability or strategy or even a plan. And 24 hours is even too much for Hamas to respond. He's actually directing this speech to the Hamas leadership outside of the Gaza Strip, and these are the one who's going to give the orders to the leaders of the militias inside Gaza to comply with the US initiative that is being marketed as Israeli-US, but in my opinion it is only American, and it is all in compliance with the US, with the Egyptian vision proposed last January, but President Trump had different vision to evacuate the Gaza Strip and displace the population. But now he's aware that this is completely unreasonable, and only the Egyptian plan is the way forward.
We would like to pinpoint our fingers on one thing you said about the leaders of Hamas outside the Palestinian territories, but let me here also ask you about the legal obligations Israel have under international law when it targets areas known to shelter displaced civilians.
Unfortunately, the United States of America and the entire West provide complete immunity to Israel from any legal or ethical commitments. Israel, of course, is criminal, and they are completely mistaken, and they should have been held accountable since 1948. We're talking about 80 years of crimes, but the European Union and the United States and the UK provide this cover, this international Western cover, so that they are never held accountable, and they always get impunity from international resolutions.
If I may ask you here, do you think the high civilian death toll would shape regional and global responses to future the future of Gaza and the reconstruction of it and aid efforts?
The West in general always claims certain humanitarian values, but now they are ignoring these values. So it was enough for very few citizens to fall dead, injured or killed in Gaza for them to respond. But now we're talking about tens of thousands of martyrs and 50,000 missing, most probably under the rubble. And when we see the reconstruction efforts, we might see 250,000 Palestinians dead. That's the minimum death toll of the war. But the West does not really pay a lot of attention to the figures. Only they are now unable, and the Egyptian vision, of course, was the only way forward for the West and for Israel to end this military operation.
Right. From Cairo, that was journalist and researcher Mr. Ihab Omar. We thank you so much for joining us on Q News, and back to Mark in our studios.
Thank you, Mona, in our newsroom. From Gaza to Beirut, let's get the latest developments from Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
An Israeli artillery strike has hit a residential house in southern Lebanon. Early Friday morning, Israeli artillery shelled a residential house in the town of Aita el-Shab. The house, located near the Shawat Hill area, was targeted at dawn, causing further damage. According to local sources, this house had been hit multiple times before with sound bombs. There were no immediate reports of casualties following the latest strike. A new Israeli breach of the Blue Line has been reported along Lebanon's southern border. A Lebanese security source reported that an Israeli infantry unit violated the Blue Line on the southern border today. According to the source, around 20 Israeli soldiers conducted a survey operation near the eastern bank of the Wazani River. Several soldiers crossed into Lebanese territory, entering a recreational park in the area. This latest breach adds to rising tensions along the border. Israeli airstrikes have targeted multiple sites in Lebanon, including an attack on a vehicle near Beirut during rush hour. Israeli air forces carried out several strikes on targets in Lebanon today, including a rare attack close to the capital Beirut. According to a correspondent from the German press agency, 2 missiles hit a highway south of Beirut while many cars were on the road during rush hour. Shortly after the strike, thick smoke was seen rising from the wreckage of a burning vehicle on the roadside. There were no reports of casualties as tensions continue to escalate along the Lebanese-Israeli border. Now to Syria, where the country has unveiled a new national emblem, with President Ahmed al-Shara stressing the country's unity and diversity. Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara has underscored the importance of national unity during the ceremony at the presidential palace in Damascus to launch Syria's new emblem. Shara said the design represents a Syria that does not accept division or partition and views its cultural and ethnic diversity as a source of strength. The new emblem features an osprey with 14 feathers, symbolizing Syria's 14 cities, and 3 stars above its head. Syrians celebrated the new emblem across the country, describing it as a symbol of a new era following the end of the Bashar al-Assad regime. A Ukrainian drone attack has struck near Moscow, injuring 1 and cutting power in a district home to a key Orthodox religious site. Ukraine launched a drone attack on Russia's Sergeyev Posad district early on Friday today, injuring at least 1 person and damaging a power substation, leaving parts of the district without electricity. Local officials reported at least 4 explosions around 75 kilometers from the Kremlin. Residents were urged to stay away from windows and avoid filming air defense operations. The district includes Sergeyev Posad, home to the 14th century Trinity Lavra of St. Sergius Monastery, a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a spiritual heart of Russia's Orthodox Church. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry claimed to have destroyed 48 Ukrainian drones overnight across 5 regions, but did not mention the Moscow region in its report. Ukraine faces massive overnight drone and missile strikes by Russia, leaving at least 23 injured in Kyiv. Ukraine endured more than 8 hours of air raid alerts as Russia launched 539 drones and 11 missiles in waves of attacks early today. According to Ukraine's Air Force, Kyiv was the main target, with drone strikes injuring at least 23 people and damaging railway infrastructure and residential areas. Mayor Vitaly Klitschko reported that 14 of the injured were hospitalized. Falling debris also ignited a medical facility, and damage was recorded across 6 of the city's 10 districts on both sides of the Dnipro River. China says a prolonged Ukraine crisis serves no one's interests and urges diplomatic solution. China's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning said on Friday that a prolonged Ukraine crisis is in no party's interest. Speaking at a regular briefing in Beijing, Mao reiterated China's consistent stance, stressing the need for diplomatic efforts and peace talks. She emphasized that China is not a party to the conflict, but has actively promoted a ceasefire and an end to hostilities. Mao said that China supports a political solution and is willing to continue playing a constructive role with the international community in line with the will of the concerned parties. A dog named Buddy has saved a Kyiv family. 10-year-old Mykola Voroshko credits his dog Buddy for saving his family as Russian drones struck Kyiv in the war's biggest serial assault on the city. Buddy, a white Pomeranian, woke the family and led them to shelter, protecting Mykola, his mother Alexandra, and sister Kira. Kyiv officials said the attack damaged around 40 apartment buildings, railway infrastructure, schools, kindergartens, cafes, and numerous cars across 6 districts. And despite exhaustion after long air raid alerts, Mykola said, "If it were not for the dog, we would have died." Russia becomes the first major power to officially recognize the Taliban government in Afghanistan. Russia has formally recognized the Taliban-led Emirate of Afghanistan, marking a major diplomatic breakthrough for the administration in Kabul. Moscow accepted the credentials of a new Afghan ambassador, replacing the former state symbol with the Taliban's white flag at its embassy in Moscow. The Russian Foreign Ministry said it saw strong prospects for cooperation in security, trade and infrastructure. No other country has formally recognized the Taliban since it seized power in August 2021. Though some have sent ambassadors. Washington is expected to closely monitor the move as Afghanistan's financial assets abroad remain frozen under US sanctions. China and Germany have vowed to deepen ties and strengthen cooperation amid global instability. This is as top diplomats meet in Berlin. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul co-chaired the 8th China-German Strategic Dialogue on Diplomacy and Security in Berlin yesterday. Wang stressed that strong relations between China and Germany can drive China-EU partnership and support global stability. He urged both nations to deepen cooperation, reaffirm mutual trust, and jointly uphold multilateralism. Wang also expressed hope that Germany would maintain its support for the One China principle. Meanwhile, Wadephul affirmed Germany's commitment to being a trustworthy partner, emphasizing the importance of close coordination in a world facing crises and challenges. NATO's new top military commander, Alexis Grenkowicz, takes command in Belgium. NATO has installed US Air Force General Alexis Grenkowicz as its new Supreme Allied Commander Europe during a ceremony in Mons in Belgium. NATO Chief Mark Rutte praised Grenkowicz's leadership as crucial for Europe's growing defense responsibilities. Grenkowicz said the alliance faces increasingly interconnected threats, but its unity and resolve remain strong. Grenkowicz succeeds General Cavoli, who had led NATO's military command since shortly after Russia's Ukraine invasion in 2022.
Thank you for your leadership, drive and determination. As one leader steps back, another leader steps forward. As Europe takes on great...
Brazil has launched major security operations in Rio de Janeiro ahead of the BRICS summit, which takes place on Sunday. Brazilian military forces carried out large-scale security preparations yesterday across Rio de Janeiro ahead of the upcoming BRICS summit. The Ministry of Defense coordinated efforts involving the Army, Navy and Air Force to secure the event. Navy officials stressed the importance of monitoring global developments to prioritize security for key delegations. Almost all BRICS leaders are expected to attend, with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping notably absent. China has warned India against using Tibet to interfere in its internal affairs after New Delhi comments on the Dalai Lama's succession. China urged India today to stop using the issue of Tibet to interfere, warning that it could harm bilateral relations. The statement came after a senior Indian minister asserted that only the Dalai Lama and his organization have the authority to choose his successor. Beijing maintains that it holds the right to approve the next Dalai Lama as part of its historical legacy. The 88-year-old spiritual leader, living in exile in India since 1959, reiterated this week that only his trust can recognize his reincarnation and suggested his successor would be born outside China. A powerful explosion at a petrol station in Rome has left at least 27 people injured, including first responders. They were injured on Friday in a massive blast at a petrol station in Rome's eastern Prenestino district. Italian authorities confirmed that 10 police officers and firefighters were among those who were hurt, along with 16 civilians, including the station's. The explosion, which occurred shortly after 8 a.m. local time this morning, sent a huge fireball and thick smoke into the sky, shaking parts of the capital. Images showed the station almost completely destroyed. Officials say investigations are underway to determine the cause of the incident. A bus travelling from Copenhagen to Vienna overturned in northern Germany, injuring 23 people. They were injured early Friday after a fixer bus veered off the A19 motorway and overturned in northeastern Germany, about 150 kilometres north of Berlin. Police said 54 passengers from at least 20 different nationalities were on board. One person suffered serious injuries and was trapped inside for an extended period before being rescued. Investigations into the cause of the accident are still underway. Archaeologists in Peru have uncovered a 3,500-year-old city believed to have been a major ancient trading hub connecting coastal and inland cultures. Peruvian archaeologists have revealed the 3,500-year-old city called Penico in the northern Barranca province. Drone images show a city centre marked by a circular structure and stone and mud buildings built 600 metres above sea level. Founded between 1800 and 1500 BC, Penico likely linked Pacific coastal societies with Andean and Amazonian cultures. The site lies near Caral, the oldest known civilization in the Americas, which emerged 5,000 years ago and developed in complete isolation from other early global civilizations. Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest returns to Coney Island today with fierce competition and big records on the line. The annual Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest is set to heat up Coney Island today. Star competitor Joey Chestnut is back after missing last year's event due to a sponsorship dispute. Chestnut holds the record of 76 hot dogs set in 2021 and says he's more motivated than ever. He will challenge reigning champion Patrick Bertoletti, who ate 58 hot dogs last year. In the women's division, defending champion Miki Sudo looks to defend her title after setting a record of 51 hot dogs in 2024. She'll face off against former champion Michelle Lasco. Fans worldwide will be watching to see who claims this year's coveted belts. Making us all hungry. Now, just before we go, let's recap the main headlines this afternoon. US President Trump says it may soon be clear if Hamas will accept final Gaza ceasefire proposal. New Israeli breach of blue line reported along Lebanon's southern border. And Syria unveils new national emblem. President al-Shara emphasizes unity and diversity. Don't forget you can follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEGY. Thanks for watching this afternoon and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.